So my name is Arjun Srinivasan. I'm the director of data science at Vesco, which is a B2B supply chain and industrial distribution company. The topic that I'm going to talk today is, the challenges and the lessons that me and my team have learned, and what I've learned through my career of deploying enterprise grade AI applications. And most importantly, how do we move beyond the hype of just doing a POC and start to realize that ROI and enterprise value. So here's the agenda for the day. I'll quickly introduce through the data and analytics maturity, just to level set and talk through, one of the scenarios that I've been working on. And then I'll introduce you through our AI roadmap, where we were a few years back and where we are right now. And then the rest of the PowerPoint is going to be, more on the focus of the meat of the topic itself, which is use case to business acceleration, uh, challenges from going from POC to production, and a lot of lessons learned from deploying enterprise grade AI application. And then I'll have some closing thoughts in the end. So, how do you view data and AI as your competitive advantage? What you see here is a common slide that the Gartners and the Foresters of the world have been showing for the last several years, but I have a slightly different spin on this. So the x-axis here is your maturity, like increasing maturity as you go from left to right, and that maturity is on data and AI as AI feeds off uh, the data, and in particular your own contextual data. And then the y-axis is on competitive advantage. Again, going from low, from the bottom to high, as you go through that vertical scale. So pre-COVID, most of the enterprises, and I'm talking about, all the way from large enterprises to SMBs, were in that insight stage. Everybody was making decisions of data, but then these decisions were more like sense and respond. A lot of them were in that hindsight or insight stage where, from a BI standpoint, from a reporting standpoint, you all had data to come up with your static report, like standard report, whether that is ad hoc reporting or doing some statistical modeling uh, and aggregating that raw data uh, was to give that point of view through the report, whether that these are KPIs or metrics for leadership or operational metrics and so on and so forth. So over the last 5 years, I've seen most of enterprises transition, or a lot of enterprises transition from insights to foresights. So this is where companies are going from just sensing and responding as a rear view, from a rear view mirror standpoint to predicting and prescribing. So what does that mean? Like take any enterprise that sells customer. You have CRM. You're making your sales. A very simple example is how do you forecast sales for your customers? So that is a very simple predictive modeling example that I gave. And, you can build upon that and come up with what if scenarios, bring in more data, not just from your CRM, from also from the external landscape, whether there is macro indicators, whether there is market indicators, or there is competitive intelligence, in the aspect of, or in that particular use case of how do you serve your customers better. So a lot of predictive and prescriptive modeling. If you're a manufacturing company, then you can do more of, more of that foresight from a predictive maintenance perspective. So irrespective of whatever company you are, like we all have been going through that foresight. Now, where the actual value is, as companies, as enterprises transition from foresights to action. So this is where reasoning and action comes in. And that is the era of cognitive intelligence where we are. Where post Chat GPT, uh, generative AI has been adopted widely within enterprises, whether that is through low code solutions or all the way to pro code solution, building your own GenAI model, and now with agentic AI, there is even more interest to kind of tap into that intelligence. So if I extend that same use case of, say, sales prediction, or like sales forecasting, and you want to kind of do churn prediction, um, you not only can just use your transactional data from your CRM and opportunity pipeline or backlog or whatnot to build a simple univariate or a multivariate model, but you can also take actionable intelligence with this era of agentic AI. And a simple example being, like how can you automate that entire ingestion of the data, whether that is coming through your CRM or that is coming through any external landscape that I taught, like real time data as it feeds in, building the fit for purpose model, whether that's a predictive model or, more of a cognitive model. And how can that take actionable intelligence? Like in a really simple sense, if like we can put intelligent systems in place that can automatically look at churn or signs of churn and then send incentive programs to these customers so that it can stop the bleeding early on. So that's kind of the type of intelligence that we are seeing in these days. Now, if I transition to next slide, so I just want to like quickly kind of go through our own AI roadmap, over the last several years. And this also resonates with a lot of other enterprises who I've been talking to, like a lot of other enterprises, enterprise leaders who I've been talking to and interacting with. Um, so early on in the maturity, you have to start somewhere, right? And to me, it is all about awareness and being very active with experimentation. So what we have done is, we have put that governance in place, both from a data and from an AI perspective. And like you have a lot of option. Like you can take a build focused approach, you can take a bulk buy focused approach, or you can come up with a hybrid approach. There is no right size. Like every enterprise is very different, and for whatever problems and pain points that your customers have that you need to solve and tie to your strategic ask, you have to come up with that right mix. But you need to put some guardrails around it. You need to have some governance around it. That needs to be proper stakeholder management. So all that comes in that first pillar, and then quickly transition to that operational stage where you're like exploring early use case. One of the angles that we've been using is I call it like an everyday AI, and these are your low risk, low effort, and like medium to high impact use cases. Um, what are what are some of the common use cases that we've been putting under that everyday umbrella? The very simple one is knowledge search and retrieval. Every company like ours sits on a corpus of knowledge, whether that is within IT or within business or for legal or for marketing, HR, whatever that is. Software development, like coding assistants are huge. Even companies like Google's and Microsoft's are reporting that more than a quarter of their code base is AI generated or AI assisted. So, like within that umbrella, Gen AI or Agentic AI is having a big impact. Document processing, any enterprise like us, which are heavy on documents, whether there is contracts or bill of material, purchase order, RFP, RFQ, you name it. Like a lot of information comes in unstructured documents. So how can you put this intelligence transition from a traditional OCR based approach to more of a Gen AI LLM based approach? And then text summarization, be it meetings or emails. So again, a lot of this use cases in this operational or early use cases are usually focused on employee productivity or improving the efficiency gain. And at the same time, you have to think about what are the systemic things, what are the systemic processes that you have to put in place so that you drive the adoption with the business. So it's not just the process. Obviously, people and technology make a big act of it. So I would kind of call it the people, process, and tech pillars. Like how do you go about with workforce planning? So we've been like putting a lot of initiatives in place so as to upskill our workforce, both from a build focused team perspective, but also more of the consumption teams, which are our end users or customers, both internal and external. The value realization from business is huge because like a lot of companies that I talk to, including ours, have like 50 plus use cases or hundreds of use cases. Like how do you choose? So you have to take that value pillar from the business, have somebody sign off on that from the business and from your finance teams to start with. Change management is what is going to drive the adoption. So we've been putting a lot of effort on that as well, coming up with business champions or having regular office hours so that our end customers, both internal and external, start to adopt this. And we also use that as a way to get feedback. And obviously, going through the tech stack refresh, um, then you'd be, I mean, like while you're doing all this, you'd be able to transition to those long horizon use cases, which is where AI becomes a part of your DNA. Like that's where the transformational uh, changes can happen within your enterprise. So these are more of high ROI use cases where you can also tangibly, like look and quantify that ROI. So here for us, like this involves coming up with synthetic data that we can then use to train the model, or like that we can use to label the model for more advanced AI algorithms. A lot of like recommendation systems where we were using traditional ML in the past. Now we are putting more intelligence within that. uh, Forecasting, whether there is for like inventory forecasting from a demand planning perspective, because we have inventory management and warehouse operation as a core of what we do. So these are all the use cases where the like where there is more effort involved, but the ROI is also quantifiable, whether that is improving the revenues or improving the margins or reducing the cost to serve. So that is that last. And again, the roadmap that is shown here is not really linear in nature. A lot of these can happen, like interchangeably, and they need to be intertwined. Like you need to be thinking about your people, process, and tech while you are putting the governance and starting to work on those near horizon use cases and so on and so forth. So let me talk through quickly some of the successful Gen AI and Agentic AI use cases that we have put in production so far. Again, the way I have bucketized this is that everyday AI and the transformative AI use cases. Within the everyday AI use cases, we are doing a lot of content creation and personalization, like whether that is for marketing team or for our sales op team or even within IT and digital teams on a day-to-day basis. We have deployed persona-based chatbots and also agents for individual functions across the company. A lot of data analysis and insight generation where AI for BI is starting to becoming mainstream. We are working on that. A lot of the data enrichment activities are happening through assistants, through chatbots and agents, whether that is to get weights and dimensions for a product info so that we can populate our P360 or PIM appropriately, and like overall improving the quality of the data so that our e-commerce teams can have high quality data that is served to our customers. Automated document processing, I said, this is a big pillar. A lot of like unstructured data that comes through our ERP and other source systems are being now taken through a documented intelligent system, where we started to put a capability which is starting to transition into a product as we speak. Language translation and localization services. We serve more than like 50 countries. So all the way from web content to product content, we are using Gen AI with heavy uh, human in the loop and also reinforcement learning to improve the translation capability and the speed to serve code generation and code refactoring agent. So we have built that all the way from, all the way from like translating COBOL code that were written in mainframe to more of the modern languages. Now, if I transition to the transformative AI use cases, like in this era of agent, we are working on agentic AI within the supply chain domain for inventory management and, like I said earlier, also recommendation system both for product and for pricing. Now, how do you need to think about use case to business acceleration? The way I would go about that is, as I said, effort and impact. So the y-axis here is impact and the x-axis is effort. Start with always, the low-hanging fruits, right? So your bottom left quadrant is where I would say this curiosity and exploration pillar. So start to create that awareness within your organization and start to do this use case canvassing and distillation across all the functions, all the pillars of your organization. Um, and then quickly transition to the top left quadrant, which is all this personalized use case or use cases that improves the personalization or improves employee productivity or, increases efficiency gain. So these are to be enabled with your business partners where your fluent responses through a chatbot or AI can create personalized content for your employees so that it tremendously improves the productivity. And why you do that, look at the foundational component, which is shown in that bottom right. And what I mean by that is, like I'll have a slide to explain about this, but these are your low impact actions that might be worth to pursue at scale. And as you are working on these three pillars, start to focus on the talk right, which are your highest value opportunity from an ROI perspective that can be quantified. So these are use cases where most of the time I would say it requires actual machine learning. Like whether you are building an advanced model using deep neural network or you're building even a simple model using a regression for something like a forecasting, like you need core principles of ML that then translate to how you serve to the customers using Gen AI or agentic AI with a high degree of accuracy. So what are the use cases that we have put together so far? If you take that slide or if you take the framework from last slide and then put it in the same kind of a map, I have split it into multiple buckets here. So as I said, a lot of use cases that we started to explore, we are kind of like putting it in that top like bucket of personalization. So we are working through a lot of content generation and content summarization like opportunities within the company. And as we transition to the core pillars or the foundational capabilities, like the Gen AI awareness and literacy has been ongoing, like that's more of a continuous journey. We are putting actual checks and balances in place to make sure that the AI models that we serve to both internal and external customers are, like have proper ethics baked into it, are bias free and have explainability so that, like any decision that is made autonomously has a reasoning, has a trail or a lineage that we can use to trace and track back and say why did the system make a decision on what it made. A lot of the data enhancement, including the data management, data quality, and governance, also goes in that foundational pillar. Now transitioning into more of content extraction capabilities, I talked about this intelligent document processing, like which is kind of an enterprise-wide effort now. A lot of data analysis and insight generation. We're going from a static BI to more of an AI for BI regime now. And if you go into more of the high value opportunity, I've categorized into three buckets. As said, traditional ML based on predictive modeling is not going away. So we do a lot of forecasting all the way from sales to inventory and across the board. The actual strategies for pricing, the recommendation for the pricing are also built on traditional ML model. The way we serve it, you're using agents or chatbot, which come as an icing on the cake, but the cake has to be fully baked using sound ML principles, if you ask me. And then as you go for more of the high ROI opportunities, there is particular focus on simulation and optimization. So these are built on operations research principles along with data-driven decision making. Um, Now, if I shift gears here, and I would like to talk about the challenges with AI projects, especially when you take it to scale, or especially as you move beyond POC. Now, every company faces a mix of these challenges and more than what I've shown here, but at least the top five that I can think of that I have seen in my own experience and heard from other enterprise leaders. First two are more on the software aspects and on the data aspects. Yeah, you have to find the right data so as to feed into an AI model, whether that is a low code or pro code tool that you're using. And then there are soft skills around communication, like stakeholder management and keeping business in the loop, like driving adoption and all that. What I'm going to focus on is the bottom three pillars there. One is the governance, like what are the components of the governance? How do you kind of think about it? Or like how have we thought about it and put it in place? ROI, like how do we kind of transition from ROI from a pure play technical metrics to business KPIs and how you make that connection? And then talk about intangible and tangible ROI and also scaling. Now, like what does scaling comprise? Like it includes architecture, it includes like reference architectures, it includes observability and monitoring pipeline. And then, like you need to think of ML ops like a extension of software, or I mean SDLC or software development lifecycle. You need to think about your CI/CD pipelines and also CT, which is continuous training. So I'll talk through these pillars and individual slides. So first thing is on enterprise AI governance. These are kind of those six pillars that I put together, and like I'll go from left to right, but it is more of a continuous cycle, I would say. You have to start somewhere, and the way we started, as said earlier, is having a proper intake process in place and having a proper use case prioritization. Like what are the levers that we use for use case prioritization? As I said, effort and impact being a couple of them. And this intake has to be driven by the business or in conjunction with the business. So if you have IT and technology and business teams, then you have to work, uh, you know, flexibly across all these pillars, and you have to involve your auxiliary teams like legal and HR and marketing to make sure that it's not only ROI, but you're also thinking about compliance and ethics and all the other pillars of the governance come into picture there. ROI and KPI needs to be clearly defined uh, by the business. Once you think about the use case prioritization, then like you have to start to put the right tech stack. And what we have also done is like not only done a tech stack refresh. The way we think about that is your data and your analytics layers comes in the bottom. So once that is well matured, then traditional AI or generative AI or agentic AI, which are more layers of abstraction coming in the market, come and sit on top of it. So we've taken a platform approach. We've also built our own platform, which has a composable design, composable architecture, and like using YAML based configuration files, we can quickly spin up a chatbot or an agent in no time, so as to serve both our internal customers and external customers. It's also vetted by enterprise architecture and cloud COE. So I put a lot of emphasis on architecture, whether that the reference architecture. And these days, most of us, we scale on cloud from an inference perspective. So, like the cloud architecture and engineering skills needs to be baked in, but you serve these applications at scale. We have put a lot of emphasis on MLOps and LLM ops, best practices and standard. So there is all kind of standard and governance documents around it. We have spun up the sandbox environment, which is completely air gapped, so we can quickly test and iterate. So it helps us. It like that. There is an ease of experimentation and testing, but there is also proper governance to go from POC to production, as we like look at these experiments and kind of make that call to push it above the line to scale. From a risk management perspective, like the AI platform that I talked about, we have enterprise security by design. So whether that is like running within our VPN, having the right data governance, like RBAC or ABAC, like role-based access or attribute-based access controls, everything is baked in so that the right customers, the right users can use these tools and take advantage of them. We have guardrails both for prompts and for actions, and like how a lot of companies are working on. We also look at for some highly regulated use cases, the ever evolving landscape on governance through say like NIST, which is coming from White House and ISO 42000 Act, or from a compliance perspective, like for our customers and for our users in EU region, looking at EU AI Act. So these are like evolving act, but like we stay on top of it to make sure that the compliance and auditability checks are taken care of. And then steering committees, as said, are in place to oversee both the pro code AI and the low code AI development. And we do a lot of third party risk assessment also, because like I personally feel that not every AI, especially in this current day and age, need to be built by your own teams within an enterprise. Like, especially if you are in a customer facing role, especially if you are serving the end markets. And like that means that you need to have or create that healthy ecosystem to onboard third party AI tools as well. So that is also something that we have put in place. A lot of workforce training in AI literacy programs going across the company, both led by our vendor partner network and also what we are doing internally. Um, and as you shift to the next pillar on the strategic partnership, I'm a big proponent of that, because in this day and age, your IP is around data. So how do you come up with IP strategies? And we have built our IP strategy around our data particularly, and then also for trade secrets along the same line. We also closely partner with closely collaborate with all our key partners, whether that is the hyperscalers or the data platform providers or third party vendors. A lot of external engagement for industry conferences. So that way we continually look outside the window and bring in best practices. So those things need to be always going, and that also helps us to stay current and relevant with what is going on outside. Then the last pillar is around continuous improvement and monitoring, especially with generative AI and agentic AI. Observability and auditing becomes key. There are a lot of players like Datadog, and you can use open source platforms like MLflow, but it needs more than just taking a platform and putting it in place, especially when it comes to agentic AI observability. We look at drift, like for the data and for the traditional ML, we look at both the data and the model drift as a part of our MLOps. AML model management goes through our cloud providers, and there is also continuous learning from human feedback. So we have put that reinforcement learning in the loop for most of the products that we say, most of the workflows and capabilities using AI that we have put together, put forth to in the hands of our internal and external customers. Now going forward, how do you think about ROI? This is a place where I've spent a lot of time over the last, I would say, like 10 years or so, all the way from my days working in an oil and gas company in big tech to where I am right now. As you build enterprise AI products at scale, you can come up with a bunch of technical metrics, right? Whether that is forecasting or a time series project, or whether that is an NLP project, and you have all these metrics related to accuracy or error, right? That's what, as a data scientist or as an AI engineer, your mind is tuned. Now, we are making intentional effort, or we have put intentional efforts in place to translate these to the business or KPIs. And not everything has an effect on revenue or margin or the cost to serve, right? But these have, I mean, like in the current day and age of GenAI and Agentic AI, these have effect on your team efficiency. Like it not only improves individual employee productivity, but also has that force multiplier effect on the team. Knowledge transfer and knowledge sharing across teams and between teams becomes, like immensely helpful with especially the era of chatbots and agentic AI that feed off these systems, where individually these were quite siloed within people's head, especially more experienced people's head. Time to value is a huge thing because it's going to improve your customer experience. And it also helps you create a competitive edge within your own industry vertical. So, quick few use cases that I had, and I want to kind of paint that picture of how I think about it. Imagine, like we put together like a text generation capability using Gen AI for our marketing team. So the inputs for these were a product description, prompts from the marketing team, even some of the customer info. And then what we got as output is, like it is a content generation example, right? So we have blog posts and social media content and even like email campaigns. So from a technical metric perspective, we were just looking at a blue score to start with, because this is text generation heavy on NLP. But then the way we are translating that to ROI or business metrics is, hey, like how are we improving CSAT? Are we doing A/B testing and see that, pre-deployment of this capability and post-deployment? Do we see that incremental improvement in CSAT? Are we seeing more user engagement? Like are we saving on cost or time? So it's just an example to show, any use case that we put together, especially as we deploy and scale these AI application across the enterprise. Always think about the ROI and think about the methods to measure that ROI, even though that may not be directly uh, quantifiable right away. Now, from a scaling perspective, I'm a big fan of MLOps and LLMOps. So what I've shown here is, like in the top left side, uh, some of the key aspects of LLMOps, and I'll walk through what we have done. So it starts from data management, and like within your LLMOps, we have prompt banks that are prompt templates that we have built for each of the use cases that we continuously iterate and design. So that's what I call as prompt engineering. The existing tools and methodologies that we have used for ML model management. We are extending that for Gen AI and for agentic AI model management. Integration is a big deal because otherwise your AI ends in a silo within your workflows, or like especially for BPA or business process automation like workflows, you need to think about integration both for source systems from ERPs or CRM and also to your target system. Security needs to be baked in. And last but not least, monitoring and observability is really critical. It's not just infra level monitoring or even like data level observability, but you need to have multiple layers of this observability and monitoring. So what we have done to scale again from POC to production, starting from that AI playground or sandbox, we have these air gap environment that help us quickly innovate and quickly iterate from those quote unquote R&D like pilots. We have put scalable architectures in place so as to rapidly accelerate POC and prototypes to production. As said, compliance and trust by design and security is baked in at the enterprise level. So we have all kind of responsible AI guardrails and also adherence to region specific policies. For the model risk management, we have multiple policies, whether that is a hybrid AI model strategy, or to support that hybrid AI model strategy, both for open source models that we usually get through our hyperscaler partners and for LLMs from managed providers. We're also self-hosting our own models. So there is more layers to that. Prompt engineering, I talked about it earlier. And then observability, what I mean by this is, as a not just in for our data observability or going into more fine-grained observability on the model. Now, LLM-based observability and agentic AI-based observability are what we are starting to, like put in place at scale. And, a really simple example that I've shown is this tool called LangFuse, which is an open source tool where you can trace, like say, if an agentic AI acts on a decision autonomously, like a few days, few weeks, few months down the lane, your auditor wants to see why that decision was made. You can go to that fine grained traceability using a Postgres database, a kind of a schema that you can put in your backend. So these are the key pillars of success for us that has been contributed to go from POC to production. Quick example I had is for an agentic AI for fraud detection. So this is a land grab, state grab for a lot of people. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about here. And I'll just go over a quick like overview in terms of how have we thought about a multi-agent AI framework. So imagine you have your ERP and data feed coming in. Like the way we started is, like we have a planner and an execution agent or an executor agent. So these are the ones that you see on the top with multiple faces. And these things feed off to multiple agents. So we have like 5 different agents here, starting from a receipt extractor, which is based on that intelligent document processing. Like once a receipt gets or an invoice gets submitted through an accounts payable like department, it kind of kicks in, like the executor agent kicks into the receipt extractor. We have OCR and LLM like capabilities. There is RAG, in memory cache, so that like as more expense gets submitted through the same vendor or over a certain period, you can compare and contrast and look for anomalies, whether that is duplicates or whether that is or that could be a potential fraudulent transaction. And once that received extractor kicks in and it sends back what it finds as a JSON format, for instance, it kicks in, like the executor agent kicks back to the entity resolver. So this is where the actual dedupe happens. Like it looks at, like it could be a simple business based logic, or you could put in LLM or MLs to look at the dedupe. You also, like we're also doing some canonicalization so as to make sure that the content is normalized and it helps with the dedupe logic that we put in place. It again kicks back to the executor agent, go to the anomaly detection. Within the anomaly detection agent, you can look like an isolation forest based ML algorithm all the way to more like smart LLM based algorithm. But once we identify the anomaly based on the policy rules set within the company, it kind of like kicks out to a decision making agent using a router logic there, and there it decides if it should be auto approved or it should kick in or it should kick back to a human in the loop, like either the user or an auditor, if they like if it deems to get more information. So this is put in place as an end to end. And what happens is, from an auditor's perspective, it helps them, because if an auditor wants to come in, and that's where the user query box comes in. If the auditor wants to comes in and probe, hey, like why did this happen? There is explainability built in. So that's where the investigator agent comes in. So the auditor can ask, like, why did this kick off? Or like, what was the issue here? Then the investigator agent has more of a long-term memory store and also has like a reinforcement learning with that human or SME or auditor in this case in the loop. It has chain of thought reasoning also. So all that JSON content gets deposited there, and then it can be retrieved through a chatbot like experience based on the policy rules for the company. So we have put this together, and like as I said, the goal here is like as we continue to mature this, our key north star would be how do you reduce or how do you minimize that human in the loop. So that is one of the examples that I want to share. Now, as we kind of get closer to the closing thoughts, I just wanted to kind of paint the picture of what I think are the future trends and the road ahead. uh, Computing is continuing to getting cheap. So once quantum computing breakthroughs, which are already happening from an R&D perspective, once that comes at scale, then a lot of the ML, not just from the training, both from training and inference stage, is going to be exponentially faster than what it takes now. We are embarking already in this journey of building specialized language model or domain specific language model. These help us with agentic AI use cases. These help us with specific tasks where we don't have to rely on a GPT-4 or GPT-5, Claude 3.5, Sonnet 4.0, like whatever that is, Gemini 2.5, which is our trained with generic data, but not the enterprise context specific data. So we are either using LoRa, QLoRa techniques to fine tune the model, make it our own domain specific model. And we are also like looking at other algorithmic approaches to see like what is the right size model so that the cost to serve at scale makes sense. A lot of emphasis on no code and low code AI platforms there. As AI is becoming more abstracted, it's going to get in the hands of end users who need not be tech savvy. Like they just need to know how to use it for their end applications. And reinforcement learning is becoming more mainstream. Now, so with all that said, my closing thoughts, just have like these four pillars that I want to hit on. Strategic alignment is really important. So we all have to ensure that whatever AI or Gen AI or agentic AI initiatives that we are putting together are tightly aligned with the broader business strategy so that you can act or we can all maximize ROI and impact for the business, especially within an enterprise context. Iterative implementation is the key. I've seen that, like once you put it out there, you have a cold start as you get it out of the box. Then you need to get the feedback. You need to think about like reinforcement learning, and that continuous learning needs to be there so as to improve it and make it more fit for purpose. And that maturity needs to be built in within the organization and circulated across as well as part of change management. The third one kind of hits on the KPI, measure what matters. Uh, if we do focus on the right KPIs and the metrics that directly reflect the value that AI brings to your org, that ensures that the monitoring and evaluation effort are effective and actionable. Last one, and as said, is the change management, because you can build successful models, you can serve it, you can scale it. If you're not, like if you don't think of how to put this in the hands of your end users or customers, whether they're internal or external, and what kind of programs that you need to put in place, whether that's an awareness campaign or incentive campaign, change management becomes hard. So with that being said, thanks all for your attention. Happy to take any questions at this point.